Tonight on The Wrap, the embodiment of policing, an emotional tribute to the two officers killed on Teesside at the weekend. A fundraiser set up in memory of PC Matthew Blades and PC Tom Clough has now passed £700,000. Meanwhile, 12 people have been arrested as police work to establish what happened in the hours and minutes before the head-on collision, which also claimed the lives of 5 young men. Also tonight, the front line in keeping Europe safe. Andy Burnham praises Ukraine and its people on a visit to Kyiv. He confirmed the government is handing over the blueprints for a long-range missile. Moscow says Britain is now participating in the war. Economic D-Day. The United States broadens the scope of its sanctions on Iran and warns other countries to cut ties with the regime. And the oceans hit their hottest temperature ever due to climate change and El Niño, promising yet more extreme weather. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the journalist and broadcaster Carolyn Quinn and political commentator Adam Bolton. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers in half an hour's time. Good evening. 12 people have been arrested as part of the investigation into the head-on crash that killed 7 people, including 2 police officers. As the circumstances of the hours and minutes before that crash become clearer, 9 men and 3 women have been detained on Teesside on suspicion of a range of offences, including organised crime. Today, as a fundraiser for the families of PC's Tom Clough and Matthew Blades passed £700,000, the chair of the Cleveland Police Federation called them the embodiment of policing, telling Sky News their loved ones' worlds have fallen apart. Our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter, reports.
As arrests are made and evidence is gathered, the investigation is deepening. But at the centre of it all are the memories of 2 fallen officers. PC Tom Clough and PC Matthew Blades were killed when their patrol car was hit by a VW driving the wrong way down the A66 in Middlesbrough. The Police Federation, which represents frontline officers, has been supporting the families of both men.
They are the embodiment of policing. Tom and Matt were so passionate about their job. They absolutely loved policing, loved doing what they did, and were a credit to the community and to our force.
You've spoken to both families. How are they?
Understandably, their worlds have absolutely fallen apart.
The 5 young men in the VW Passat that had been pursued through the streets before the crash lost their lives too. The police said 4 had previous convictions and were investigating other suspected links to organised crime. They also said that at this stage there is no evidence to suggest that they were filming what they were doing for TikTok. But 12 suspects have now been arrested in connection with drugs, firearms and organised crime.
We know we have a huge number of issues and challenges here. It's no secret our crime statistics here have been on the wrong end of the table for a long time, and Cleveland Police have made huge efforts to deal with that.
It is an appalling aftermath, but the police have vowed to work robustly to bring anyone involved to justice. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Middlesbrough.
Well, as the police investigation continues, the circumstances surrounding the crash are becoming clearer. Our North of England correspondent, Shingi Mararike, has been looking at what happened in the minutes before the collision.
At 3:36 a.m, the Passat was travelling here along Lime Road, followed by 3 police vehicles. Sky News analysis suggests in this CCTV, the Passat was travelling around 70 miles per hour. Around 20 seconds later, the pursuit is caught on another CCTV camera in Residential Road, The Larches. 1 police car is 4 seconds behind. The 2 others are 18 and 20 seconds behind. And 40 seconds after that, Those two police vehicles take a wrong turn into Elm Close. Less than a minute later, the Passat is seen travelling north on this road, Normanby Road. Our analysis suggests it's travelling between 85 and 95 miles per hour. It's being followed by 7 police vehicles. The first one just 4 seconds behind, and the last one more than a minute behind.
Well, as Shingu described, the circumstances becoming a lot clearer, but what's obvious is the grief, as we saw there from Cleveland Police Federation, suggesting that the actual grief surrounding when an officer is killed is indescribable, as she put it.
Yes, obviously. I mean, this is strange. It's not a policeman being directly shot or stabbed or murdered. It's, you know, as a result of a car crash at one level, an accident, although presumably the people driving the car would be guilty of manslaughter at the very least, although they're all no longer with us. I mean, it is a strange situation made stranger by these multiple arrests, which we're reporting tonight, because clearly more lies behind the people in the cars and the stories than you know, a normal kind of sort of joyriding offence. That said, it's interesting that the police are also saying that there is no evidence that this was being videoed, that although we know that one of the young men who died in the car had previously been put up videos of speeding and being pursued by the police. Police actually got out of their way to say they haven't found evidence that it was being videoed on this occasion. Yes,
no evidence that there were any links to any TikTok accounts or it was being filmed. But nevertheless, Andy Burnham has spoken out against social media companies who are allowing this type of material to be viewed and shared.
Yeah, he's called it truly reprehensible to share footage like this, and there have been warnings to young people not to share the footage either. Obviously, there's an appeal now to the social media companies to take down this sort of material, which is glorifying violence. You know, people who are putting this material up there to get clicks and likes, and they're encouraged to do more and more extreme acts just to show off some content. So although this case wasn't connected, it seems, with that, it has highlighted that issue of kids being shown glorifying dangerous driving and thinking, well, I like the look of that. I want to get likes on my content. I'm going to do the same. I mean, it's absolutely tragic. And 2 police officers have been killed in the line of duty, going out of a night time, just doing what they would have thought of as a routine patrol. And you saw the pain on the face of the chair of the Cleveland Police Federation, and the fact that the public have given so much already to a fund to help their families shows that how shocked people are, and they want to show their shock and their support in the only way that they can. If they don't know the police officers personally, they've contributed to the fund.
Although in this instance, the police saying there's no evidence of the activities being carried out to be shared on social media, with the Prime Minister being so harsh, really, with social media companies, what action do you think we'll see from them now? Because it is illegal activity that is being shared.
Yes, and under existing legislation, the companies do, you know, should be taking this down. The problem is it's citizen-generated, if you like, so as fast as it goes up, as fast as it comes down, it goes up. But we're seeing front page of the Metro, they're saying time to halt the Hell Riders. I mean, there is definitely going to be calls for stopping these videos, or indeed actually prosecuting people who put up the videos for what they show in their video they have done. I mean, some people are suggesting that there might be a good idea for the police to follow up and make arrests. But of course, it's by no means the first time that crazes or things, you know, ideas being put out on social media have had tragic consequences. I mean, all the way from, you know, young people committing suicide to you know, there were a number of young people who died in some kind of holding their breath challenge, wasn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, so,
yeah, and how many times have we heard that the social media companies are being told to take responsibility for what's being published? There's supposed to be regulation, isn't there? There's supposed to be rules against this sort of online activity. But we seem to hear this sort of thing over and over, not just with the driving clips, but things like the pro-anorexia sites, you know, as you say, sites that seem to encourage youngsters who may be susceptible to it. You know, these aren't being taken down, and they're supposed to be taken down.
These sort of things have always gone on, but the problem is now the amplification, which turns them, you know, into a kind of epidemic. And I mean, I almost wonder with the, you know, the cars driving at high speed, whether, you know, everyone now on the streets can see e-bikes breaking the law constantly and with absolutely no consequence. And, you know, on the sort of broken window principle, that may be where it starts, that, you know, people are not forced to obey any rules of the road if they're on bikes, or particularly on e-bikes, and then they go and get in cars and do the same thing and get away with it.
Yeah, but certainly in terms of the social media and the proliferation of these trends, they aren't really being held to account in any meaningful way. Let's turn to Ukraine now, shall we? And Andy Burnham says now is the time to keep up the pressure on Russia. During his visit to Ukraine, his first foreign trip as Prime Minister, Mr Burnham praised the Ukrainian people as they marked Independence Day and confirmed the UK is handing over the blueprints to allow Ukraine to produce its own long-range missiles. Moscow says Britain is now participating in the war. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports.
If there had been any doubts about Andy Burnham's commitment to the Ukrainian cause, he has in one day dispelled them, making Kyiv his first foreign destination as Prime Minister, standing alongside Ukraine's wartime leader, his voice ringing with conviction. He pledged his support.
As President Zelensky has said, Ukraine is not a poor relative, but a strong ally. I'd go further still. Ukraine has been Europe's protector, not a drain on our security, but the front line of keeping Europe safe.
The Prime Minister had come to Kyiv for Ukrainian independence events, a day laden with symbolism highlighting the sacrifices made in this war, and to meet with allies in the coalition of the willing supporting Ukraine. He brought with him the promise to let Ukraine build its own Storm Shadow missiles, provoking, predictably, Russia's anger.
Britain is participating in this war on the side of the Kyiv regime. Britain is methodically and consistently adding fuel to the fire and plotting to prevent a peaceful settlement process. That is precisely what they're doing.
But what does the UK get in return for that Storm Shadow technology? Well, Britain wants to tap into something that Ukraine, and only Ukraine really has, operational experience in fighting the new kind of war raging on the front line with Russian forces, a sci-fi war of machines, drones and AI. Ukraine is developing powerful AI platforms helping to trace, track and target the enemy, and Britain will now have access to the AI technology that Ukraine is building. These pictures said all about this war, the world's first military parade comprising only unmanned weapon systems. What Ukraine needs most, though, is protection against this: Russian ballistic missile attacks on civilian targets. France has now authorised Ukraine to use its technology to make its own interceptors to neutralise the ballistic missile menace. Britain's Ministry of Defence has told Sky News the UK will not be doing the same as part of this latest deal with Ukraine. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
Well, as you can see, our political correspondent Lucy McDade has joined us. And just first of all, put this into context. How significant is it that Andy Burnham made his first international visit as Prime Minister to Ukraine?
Yeah, well, it's very significant, isn't it? I mean, so much of Keir Starmer's premiership was dominated really by what was happening internationally. Andy Burnham then came in as Prime Minister, and I think it's fair to say one of the questions was, how would the former mayor of Greater Manchester fare with these big global issues? So going into Ukraine just after a month after becoming Labour leader, I mean, you know, if you compare it, I think for Keir Starmer it was after 7 months, and we can get caught up in those timelines. But it shows, I think it's almost certain that this is a purposeful move. It's significant because it shows his personal position. It shows that he's just as supportive of Ukraine as previous prime ministers have been. He said that several times today. But also diplomatically, it comes at a time where the threats from Russia, the warnings about the UK's involvement have been increasing. Recently, the Russian embassy in the UK said to the UK that the higher our involvement, the higher the consequences. And today, after that confirmation that the blueprint for this UK component of a missile will be handed over to Ukraine, Russia then said that the UK is adding fuel to the fire. So I think that the image there that Andy Burnham is putting out is that the UK support is unwavering, unapologetic, and will continue, as he said today, until the very, very end.
But the Russian perception, Carolyn, is that the UK is now participating in the war. So that steps it up a notch, doesn't it?
Yeah, except, you know, the use of this technology will not come to the fore for a very long time. So it's not as if there's going to be an instant change in the amount that Ukraine can do. But certainly the sort of full-throated support from Andy Burnham shows that he will not be bowed by Moscow's words. And as you said, there's been the threat from Moscow already, but Andy Burnham today saying we are not fair weather friends, we will stick with Ukraine. And it's interesting that there's been also reciprocal work now being offered from Ukraine to help the UK to detect and know how the Russians work when they've got their air forces and their airfields. I'm quite intrigued by the idea that Ukraine, who we think we've been giving all the help to, that they are now in a position where they can offer us advice and technology and quite meaningful help.
There was a kind of you always get the family photograph, don't you, from these. Andy Burnham chaired his first coalition of the Willing meeting, and there's a selfie photograph that Zelensky took of kind of all the leaders behind him. And you're right, there's that idea that we've been given everything to Ukraine. And actually, I think there is a sense that we and other European countries have got a huge amount to learn from Ukraine. And actually, we're in that position now where part of this deal, part of Burnham going over to Ukraine, is also an acknowledgement that we've got an awful lot to learn for our own kind of defence capabilities.
Yeah, and that's quite key, isn't it, Adam, that the UK, I mean, they are giving the blueprint for long-range missiles to Ukraine, controversially in terms of Russia's perception of that. But there is also a deal that they're receiving information on AI systems and how to integrate that and use that in future conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to Michael Clark earlier on Sky, and he was saying that Ukraine now has the best army in Europe and the best fighting capability. So one of the things that's changed over the 4.5 years since Russia's unprovoked aggression is that, you know, Ukraine military has outperformed expectations, has skills, and as we were just hearing, there are reciprocal benefits which, you know, would benefit us in the future if Ukraine manages to stay sovereign, which is precisely why it's more important than ever that we support them. I mean, I have to say, I think it was a picture-perfect first visit for Andy Burnham. You know, he had his informal dress early on, then he had his tie on. He clearly was passionate. And I think he did get an important message out, which is that there is no change, that Britain remains the same, because we know that they're minorities, but they're minorities on both the extreme left and the extreme right. On the one hand, sympathetic to Putin, perhaps, on the other hand, anti-war, who are saying, should Britain be getting as embroiled in this conflict? And he's saying, yes, it should. And, you know, the one kind of witticism, if you like, he came out with, you know, his immediate response to the Russians saying you're pouring fuel on the fire was, well, who started the fire? Which is, you know, is very easy for people to understand that it was the Russians. And we didn't see the pictures there, but stills photographers, he visited one of the sites that have been recently bombed, and he also apparently picked up the electric guitar with some soldiers and played a bit of the
Speaking of which, it was supposed to be a serious visit, as we know that it was, but the Prime Minister's reputation as a musician had clearly reached Kyiv. A group of Ukrainian soldiers who met Mr Burnham had brought a guitar along, and the PM was very happy to oblige.
It's a song by a Manchester band called The Smiths. You know The Smiths?
Yeah.
It's a song called Rush Home Ruffians. I'm out of practice a little bit. Harry's waiting for me to sing, but it's not going to happen, Harry.
The last night of the fair, by the big wheel generator.
Rush Home Ruffians. Just showing how at ease he is actually on the international stage.
I'm just thinking that's his social media content being created right there, and in a way where people say Keir Starmer didn't do as well. What he's doing there is bearing in mind his domestic audience, his young voters, and you look at polling interestingly, and actually his content is cutting through to 18 to 24-year-olds more than Zach Polanski, more than Nigel Farage. And that's a really good example right there of how even dealing with international issues, he's trying to cut through to other people as well.
Well, I'm a wannabe guitar player. I try and I try and I try and I try to get a bit better, but the pressure of doing it like that in front not just of the soldiers, but also in front of the cameras, he said he was a little bit nervous. He sounded all right, didn't he?
Didn't look forced. That's what.
No,
exactly.
It was very
but I think he's
natural,
quite aware of the social media content that he's creating constantly. He's been very good on that platform before he was Prime Minister.
And again, there's always a danger, isn't there, when you become Prime Minister, and maybe like Keir Starmer, you lose that authenticity and that relaxed nature. It becomes too choreographed and you look too on edge. And Andy Burnham is kind of showing that actually he's maybe maintained that being at ease, being comfortable in front of the camera.
Yeah, it did seem spontaneous. I believe that it was. We'll believe that it was. Let's turn to the United States now, and they've unveiled new sanctions targeting Iran in what the Trump administration is calling economic D-Day. The measures would hit any country which trades with Tehran, with Donald Trump said to be calling world leaders to persuade them to cut ties. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says all countries have a decision to make.
Iran now faces a very clear choice, with only two paths before them: complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy. To those who enable Tehran, do not discount the cost of testing Washington's resolve. No nation should expect to enjoy the rewards of our system while helping those who seek to destroy it. It is now a time for world leaders to make a decision between prosperity and isolation, peace and terror, America and Iran.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent now, Mark Stone. Mark, what do these newly announced sanctions tell us about where we are with the United States wanting to end this war in Iran?
Well, critics will say, critics of America, that is, will say it tells us that Donald Trump is desperate, that he has realised that his excursion, as he once called it, 6 months old this Friday, into Iran has not worked, and that the military side of it is really very, very difficult for him indeed. He hasn't got Iran to do what he wants them to do, and therefore he is now pulling levers, economic levers. Now, on top of that, what is also kind of curious is that Iran is already so heavily sanctioned, and yet it still manages to operate and to do what it's doing. So what more can the Americans do? Now, Scott Bessent didn't really go into a great deal of detail. This was quite a short statement, a news conference. I think it lasted less than 20 minutes. And he is not, I mean, they're calling it D-Day, but he's not actually imposing anything right now. So it's really not D-Day. What he is saying is you've got a bit of time. And he was asked what these countries and entities, why not just impose these sanctions right now? And I think we got a clue from his answer about how devastating perhaps this could be, because he said he didn't want to blow up the world financial system right now. So does that mean that if he follows through with these sanctions, that it would blow up the world economic system? Well, perhaps. Only, though, if he really follows through, because the one country that is propping up the Iranians right now is, guess what, China. And so if he is to sanction China, as he is threatening, and sanction those countries that are propping Iran up, then that would mean China, and it could be really quite devastating, a proper trade war with China. But the question unanswered is whether or not Bessent and his boss, President Trump, are willing actually to follow through on these threats. We will see.
OK, Mark, thank you very much for that. That is the multi-million-dollar question. Will the United States follow through on the threats? Trump often called the taco president. Trump always chickens out. Is this another instance of that?
Yes, and the Iranians have learnt, haven't they, that Donald Trump's threats rarely translate into action. So they may well be sitting back thinking, let's see what happens. We're not unnerved by this. As we were hearing there, China is the big question. Does Donald Trump want to unleash a trade war with China, especially when the leader of China, Xi Jinping, is coming to Washington, isn't he? In the next month or so, I think.
24th September.
Yeah. So there's a visit that's been scheduled, talked about. Xi Jinping coming to Washington. Does Donald Trump really want to upset that visit? Does he want to unleash a trade war? I mean, that's the big question. It's all very well doing the threats, but will he see it through with action?
I mean, I have to say, watching Scott Bessent earlier on, he didn't seem to have much conviction behind the sort of threats he was issuing. And, you know, you couldn't really see him carrying through. He just seemed to be reading a script.
Yeah, and quite literally huffing and puffing quite a lot as he delivered it. I mean, the immediate response from the Chinese was to issue a joint statement with the Iranians saying that trade relations remain absolutely fine. The Pakistanis, who, remember, have now formed an alliance with Turkey and Saudi Arabia, are actually on a trade mission to Iran at the moment. So, you know, if he really is saying he's going to bring the world to heel over all this, Donald Trump and Bessent have their work cut out for them. And we do have to remember that, you know, the effect of the sanctions, the tariffs put on the world on so-called Independence Day, first of all, they were ruled out by the Supreme Court in the US. Yeah. But secondly, the Chinese immediately countered and forced the Americans to back down on what they were doing towards the Chinese. So, frankly, it seems to me this is, you know, almost a diversion to get America talking about Donald Trump standing tough, but it's very difficult to see in practical terms what's going to happen.
Dominic, they were saying it's desperation.
Yeah, well, his options, Donald Trump's options are running out.
He's tried so many different things, hasn't he? So many threats that haven't been followed through, so many other things. Tariffs, we've seen tariffs, as you say, imposed, then dropped or changed. I think the Iranians and the Chinese will just be sitting back and waiting.
And this is going to do nothing to open up the Straits of Hormuz.
No.
You know, which were open before Trump and Israel started this war.
Yeah. And Iran seemingly not fazed by the threats today. They're saying the US is guilty of a campaign to increase psychological pressure on the Iranian people, and any secondary sanctions would be an act of war. But we're already at war.
Yeah, and the Iranian regime seem to have a very high pain threshold because they know that they don't really care about public opinion. So it's a different matter. You know, you've got Donald Trump who's weighing up what's happening at home. How does he try to bring an end to this war that was started before the midterm elections? He's got much more domestic pressure on him than the Iranian regime, which is even tougher, it seems, than the original regime, which was wiped out in those initial strikes.
Yeah, and his approval rating, the lowest that they've ever been at any point, with the midterms coming up.
He needs something, and it's not really working anywhere at the moment, is it?
Not good news for Donald Trump in the United States. Coming up next, we'll take a first look at what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Time now to see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Time to halt the hell rides is the headline in the Metro, with the paper leading on social media firms being ordered to remove videos of joyriders after 7 people died in a head-on crash near Middlesbrough on Saturday. It's the same story in the Daily Express, with the paper noting that videos of cars weaving through traffic at more than 100 miles per hour were still visible on some platforms. The Sun says Andy Burnham has declared war on deadly joyride videos. The Guardian reports on the Prime Minister accusing the Kremlin of making outrageous threats against Britain during his first visit to Ukraine since entering Downing Street. The UK has been handed the secrets to foil Putin's saboteurs, according to The Telegraph, with the paper reporting on a deal for Ukraine to share its battlefield intelligence. Andy Burnham refusing to rule out tax rises in the autumn budget is on the front of the Times, with the Prime Minister saying he won't be unrealistic about the state of the public finances. The Eye reports that Housing Secretary Angela Rayner is planning to create a boom in social and council housing by building tens of thousands more properties across the country. The Daily Mail reports that 1 in 7 people in England were prescribed with antidepressants last year, following a rise in mental health problems since the pandemic. The Financial Times goes with Donald Trump's pledge to increase Canadian car tariffs to 50% after trade talks collapsed between the two countries. News that snooker champion Graham Dott has been found guilty of sexually abusing children is the lead in The Star. But let's start with the Metro and their headline, Time to Halt the Hell Rides, TikTok being ordered to remove footage. Obviously this comes off the back of the 7 people that have lost their lives on that A66 crash, although police are saying in that instance there's no evidence that it occurred to have material to be uploaded on any social media.
Yeah, and we are hearing from companies like TikTok that they are trying to take stuff down, which is a pretty quick response given previous arguments, and are taking stuff down. For example, you can no longer see the videos that were posted by one of the young people in the Passat when it crashed. But, of course, people are always free to put up new material, and so it's a kind of game of whack-a-mole. But speaking of whack-a-mole, there are even some people saying that perhaps what the police should do is pick out the people who have posted the most egregious videos and prosecute them as well.
Caroline, do you think now the Prime Minister has stepped into this, you know, saying it's reprehensible that any of this type of material is shared and perpetuated on social media? Do you think that now we will see some change?
Who knows? It feels as if we've been hearing these warnings and promises and calls for more regulation of these social media platforms. They've been accused of encouraging illegal driving, haven't they, by encouraging young people to post their content, to show off to their friends and their peer groups. And just reading here that some websites offer payment schemes to users whose views and follower counts exceed a certain level, and the earnings can range from a few pounds to several hundred, depending on their popularity. So as long as there's money involved, and unless there is a firm regulation on the social media companies to take it down. Adam is right that TikTok have been saying, look, we are trying to take this stuff down, but there are many other platforms that still are out there promoting this kind of material. And the Prime Minister
I think that,
saying...
some of the social media sites, like TikTok, would say it's perhaps unfair to say they're encouraging people to continue with illegal behaviour. The encouragement is for people to post things that get likes and you know, bring them revenue, but they're not encouraging the illegality.
Well, it's a way of living for some people, isn't it? That they find the thrill of their content being liked. You know, this glorifying of dangerous driving for clicks and entertainment. I think, you know, I find it difficult to understand why that would be an exciting thing, but it is.
It is kind of bad influence type things, people putting stuff up, and as Carolyn says, in some circumstances you can make money from it. It also needs to, you know, we have to recognise that young people will do foolish and reckless things, and they always have done. I think the problem is that the number of people doing it is being increased by the influence of social media. And also, you know, what we're hearing in this case with 12 people being arrested today is clearly there is more complexity behind the case than just joyriders crashing. So in that sense, it's possibly a bit different from what happened in Ireland last week when 5 people were killed in a very similar type of accident.
I think the term joyriders shouldn't be applied to this situation at all, because there's nothing joyful about how it can end up in certain circumstances. The Express also removes sick danger driving footage now. We do have a statement from TikTok, as we have been mentioning them specifically, in which they say its policies strictly prohibit content that could cause significant physical harm, including dangerous driving, and it is actively removing any videos and accounts that break our rules. The company says the majority of harmful content is removed before it's flagged by users. So they're saying that they actively, well, they're proactive and they remove most of the content before it even gets to the platform, but still, there is still an awful lot getting through. So.
Yeah. It's people want to live their lives online and using content. I mean, even you don't take a photograph anymore. You take content now. Your phone is advertised as something that will promote really good content. I mean, I take a photo, I'm afraid. I don't do content, but, you know, I'm a different generation to the people that have been brought up and have lived their lives surrounded by social media. It is a way of life.
Yeah, no, and they often say, younger people that I speak to, say that if you don't take a photo or a video, it hasn't happened, which is a very different reality for us. Let's move on to The Guardian. Adam takes us into this story. Burnham accusing Putin of outrageous threats against Britain. This is now Russia saying that Britain's actively involved in the war with Ukraine. Yeah,
Andy Burnham following in the footsteps of Prime Ministers going back all the way back to Boris Johnson, I think, when this Russian aggression against Ukraine accelerated, and saying similar things, although it has to be said, saying some of them with rather more eloquence than we've had previously, making the point that what Russia is doing in attacking Ukraine is outrageous, and then responding to a series of threats. I mean, the threat that the Russians made, first of all, when it was found that British-made drones were being used to strike Russia, and then further today with the announcement that Storm Shadow technology is going to be provided to the Ukrainians, Russians saying that was pouring fuel on the fire, and you know, Burnham, quick as a flash, was back saying, well, who started the fire? And you know, a very clear statement of his position, you know, wanting to uphold, you know, the rules of diplomacy and international relations, that sovereign borders should not be attacked by neighbours. But putting it very succinctly in a picture on the front of The Guardian, again, a very human picture of him meeting soldiers who have been wounded in the conflict, one in a wheelchair, one with a brace on their leg. So again, we are seeing a Prime Minister who is good at empathy, at emotion, at getting across the message in very simple, stark terms.
Yeah, and making it absolutely clear where he stands by this being his first international visit. You know, he could have gone to the States and he went straight to Ukraine. So absolutely clear on where his priorities are and who he stands with.
Yeah, absolutely. President Zelensky was the first visitor after Andy Burnham became Prime Minister, and here the first foreign trip. And of course, Andy Burnham has already faced criticism of, that he's only going to be focused on domestic issues and he won't be across the international domain. But, he's learning on the job. But as you say, Adam, he's proving so far to be saying the right things and sitting here with soldiers who just demonstrate the absolute resilience of the Ukrainian forces. The fact now that there is this amazing exchange of information as well between the British passing on the missile documents that will enable Ukraine to make the Storm Shadow weapons themselves, and in return, Ukraine is helping the UK with more knowledge about how the Russian forces.
I mean, it may not be resonating so much with us here, but today is actually Ukrainian Independence Day, and I think the Ukrainians will certainly notice that they had this high-profile visit on Independence Day, as well as the coalition of the willing, France and Germany and Britain getting together. And worth pointing out that across Europe, buildings have been, at night they've been lit up in the Ukrainian colours of yellow and blue. Don't think that's happened in Washington somehow.
But for President Zelensky, it must also be very welcome because he's faced pressures at home, hasn't he? Mikhail Fedorov, the former defence minister, who has he's faced corruption charges, he's faced calls to hold another election. So he is facing domestic pressures himself. So a visit like this will certainly be very, very welcome for the Ukrainian president.
Let's just have a quick look at the Yorkshire Post, staying in that region. But as we know it, the first Brit has died fighting for Russia, Adam. Yeah,
this is someone from the Yorkshire region who went out apparently with 3 of his mates. He's called Bradley Townsend from Barnsley, and he posted a video with his 2 other mates who are presumably still alive and still fighting for the Russians. His argument was that Donetsk as a region wanted independence, so why shouldn't they get independence? Trouble is, that's a somewhat naive analysis of the situation, because as we know, what really Donetsk, or what the Russians are trying to do, was to annex Donetsk and make it part of Russia. And it also means that this man has given his life for Russia, which is set on denying independence to Ukraine. So, confusing and a sad story to a certain extent that this man's lost his life apparently in the Donetsk region in a Ukrainian airstrike. But we have seen a number, I haven't kept a score, but I think it's a handful of Britons who've gone out to fight for Ukrainian independence have also been killed.
But this is the first that has been fighting for Russia. We must leave it there. Thank you both for the moment. Coming up, why record high ocean temperatures spell bad news for life in the water and on land. Stay with us to find out more.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
explain to me why. We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait, right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. The next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera. Turn around and go away.
Okay, but
Listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today.
Congratulations, this is a huge moment.
But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Now, new data suggests the world's oceans are hotter than ever recorded, driven by the growing El Niño weather phenomenon and human-caused climate change. With wide-reaching consequences, it's bad news for life in the water and on land, as our science editor Tom Clark explains.
We've had heat wave after heat wave here on land, but wait till you see what's been going on in the ocean. The all-time high for sea temperature has just been smashed in records going back to 1979. This chart from EU climate monitor Copernicus shows daily ocean surface temperatures averaged across the globe. The latest daily mean is 21.1 degrees, nearly a full degree warmer than the long-term average shown by the dotted line. A stark reminder of how our oceans are responding to climate change. But there's more to it. The record is being broken in August. Typically, oceans don't reach their global average till February or March. The last time we had an August peak in temperatures was in 2023, an El Niño year. And there's the clue. Oceans are already responding to the extremely powerful El Niño brewing in the Pacific. This suggests ocean temperatures will remain high as the El Niño reaches its peak in November. So what does that mean? Marine heat waves impact sea life and fisheries. But ocean heat also drives our weather, increasing the power of storms and the amount of moisture that can fall as rain. Many parts of the world, including the UK, are in for more wild weather in the months to come.
Yeah, so the ocean heat drives our weather, and it's going to make it more unpredictable, as I understand it. So, you know, vast variations in what we're traditionally expecting.
Yeah, I think it means there's more moisture in the atmosphere, and therefore that means that the risk of torrential rain...
Storms are more likely.
Storms increases, and then also it works through that there are more droughts. And of course, we've already seen evidence of the sea warming around our shores with the arrival of fish and tuna fish and jellyfish that we wouldn't normally expect to see in our waters because they're too cold. And commensurate with that is there are traditional species which are really struggling now because it's too hot for them. So, you know, it is transformative. I have to say I don't quite understand El Nino and El Nino. There's as well.
Nino, yes, there's a feminine, isn't there?
It's about reversing currents, isn't it? And things like that.
But as I understand it, El Nino isn't in itself anything to do with climate change.
No.
It's a natural phenomenon.
No, they are two separate things, but the impact and the effect of El Nino could be amplified by the climate change conditions that we've all been experiencing very first-hand this summer. And I guess, you know, if here in the UK we experience many more storms and rain, maybe up until the end of the year, it's uncomfortable for us, but we can cope with it. But if you think of the vast areas of the world now that could be dried completely, that could be drought-ridden, and it's not just the impact on the land and the cultivation, it's people and migration. It all starts to build up into one massive problem.
We've already seen massive floods in Asia and very serious wildfires in North America. I mean, more serious than ever, all apparently increased in ferocity by the temperature.
Yeah, and the countries closer to the tropical Pacific will increase risks of landslides and all
never
these
mind,
natural
Donald Trump
disasters.
says it's all a hoax.
That's climate change. I don't know what he thinks specifically about El Nino. We shall have to ask. Shall we see what's happening with the weather closer to home?
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
Well, there'll be warmer air bringing showery outbreaks and will spread from the south over the coming days, with the rain turning heavy and possibly thundery in places. There'll be a mainly mild and mostly fine start tomorrow, but expect showers in the cloudy southwest and near some northeastern English coasts. The morning looks mainly dry with sunny spells, but southwestern parts will keep a scattering of showers. Eastern Scotland will see showers mainly light, developing quite widely too. It'll be warm but windy in the south, cool in the north. Southwestern Britain and the south of Ireland will see showers becoming more widespread later on, some heavy and possibly thundery. Northwestern Scotland may catch the odd shower too, while showers over eastern Scotland will fade. Ireland and central and southern parts of the UK will see showery outbreaks spreading from the southwest on Wednesday, with some thundery downpours possible. Sunnier skies and more scattered showers will follow to the southwest, while the northern UK looks mostly fine.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Coming up, 12 people are arrested as part of the investigation into the head-on crash that killed 7 people, including 2 police officers.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional. This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Tonight on The Wrap, the embodiment of policing, an emotional tribute to the two officers killed on Teesside at the weekend. A fundraiser set up in memory of PC Matthew Blades and PC Tom Clough has now passed £700,000. Meanwhile, 12 people have been arrested as police work to establish what happened in the hours and minutes before the head-on collision, which also claimed the lives of 5 young men. Also tonight, the front line in keeping Europe safe. Andy Burnham praises Ukraine and its people on a visit to Kiev. He confirmed the government is handing over the blueprints for a long-range missile. Moscow says Britain is now participating in the war. Economic D-Day. The United States broadens the scope of its sanctions on Iran and warns other countries to cut ties with the regime. We discuss the day's biggest stories with the journalist and broadcaster Caroline Quinn and political commentator Adam Bolton. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers in half an hour's time. Good evening. 12 people have been arrested as part of the investigation into the head-on crash that killed 7 people, including 2 police officers. As the circumstances of the hours and minutes before that crash become clearer, 9 men and 3 women have been detained on Teesside on suspicion of a range of offences, including organised crime. Today, as a fundraiser for the families of PC's Tom Clough and Matthew Blades passed £700,000, the chair of the Cleveland Police Federation called them the embodiment of policing, telling Sky News their loved ones' worlds have fallen apart. Our national correspondent Tom Parmenter reports.
As arrests are made and evidence is gathered, the investigation is deepening. But at the centre of it all are the memories of 2 fallen officers. PC Tom Clough and PC Matthew Blades were killed when their patrol car was hit by a VW driving the wrong way down the A66 in Middlesbrough. The Police Federation, which represents frontline officers, has been supporting the families of both men.
They are the embodiment of policing. Tom and Matt were so passionate about their job. They absolutely loved policing, loved doing what they did, and were a credit to the community and to our force.
You've spoken to both families. How are they?
Understandably, their worlds have absolutely fallen apart.
The 5 young men in the VW Passat that had been pursued through the streets before the crash lost their lives too. The police said 4 had previous convictions and were investigating other suspected links to organised crime. They also said that at this stage there is no evidence to suggest that they were filming what they were doing for TikTok. But 12 suspects have now been arrested in connection with drugs, firearms and organised crime.
We know we have a huge number of issues and challenges here. It's no secret our crime statistics here have been on the wrong end of the table for a long time, and Cleveland Police have made huge efforts to deal with that.
It is an appalling aftermath, but the police have vowed to work robustly to bring anyone involved to justice. Tom Parmenter, Sky News, Middlesbrough.
And the tributes to the police constables who've lost their lives are really, heart-rending, aren't they? When you see the Cleveland Police Federation spokeswoman there, what she was saying in more of that interview is that there's something that is really quite gut-wrenching when the grief comes about from someone who's in the police force, that it's a special type of grief because these people run towards dangers when others run away. And the community really has been hit very hard.
Yeah, it was thought initially that the police car containing the 2 policemen who were killed was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it has now been confirmed that they had been called out to try and find the speeding car, although the operation was closed off apparently seconds before, officially, you know, people were told to drop it seconds before the collision took place. So all round, it was, you know, these two police constables were just doing their job on patrol, being sent there, and they end up dead. And I think the fact that, you know, for the funding page now has raised £700,000 just shows how the public are responding, and also very much demonstrated there by the head of the local police federation, you know, the emotion involved in a small police service, and clearly the reaction of you know, the 12 arrests, you know, after a crash is quite extraordinary, and the range of charges, range of suspected charges is quite extraordinary. You know, suggesting that perhaps the police were in a position where they, you know, they knew that there were people up to no good in their community, but they couldn't really, you know, find a way of getting at them, and now perhaps that has happened.
The police have been clear that in this instance there was no suggestion that the law breaking was being filmed in order to be uploaded onto to social media like TikTok. But we have had the Prime Minister say that those who carry out these illegalities with dangerous driving and then post the material, it's reprehensible.
Yeah, truly reprehensible, the Prime Minister has said. And the fact is that although there is no evidence in this case there was filming of the activity, it has really highlighted the whole issue of the fact that so many people do seem to share this footage online. The social media platforms are now being told do not carry material like this, but it's still there. TikTok, that has been mentioned quite a lot in this story, does say that it's trying to do its best to keep a lid on it, to take the content down, but it just keeps being replaced, and it's a very attractive prospect for people to put content like this on, to do ever more extraordinary things, to get more likes and perhaps get paid in the process if their likes mount up to a certain level. Interestingly, the Independent Office for Police Conduct has now launched an investigation into this collision. Cleveland police self-referred themselves, which usually would happen in a case like this, but there will be so much more to unpick over this, and we will be hearing for quite a long time the details of what led up to this, the seconds beforehand, the collision itself, and what may be the repercussions in terms of the message that it sends to people about dangerous driving. They were reaching speeds of 85 to 95 miles an hour, the car, your reporter was saying, through ordinary streets in the town. You know, thank goodness there wasn't somebody out wandering at 4 in the morning who could have got hurt. You know, there are so many awful things that you can think through beyond the terrible tragedy of the lives lost.
Yes, yes.
We do know that one of the people in the car had previously uploaded these videos, so presumably of himself in a car involved in a police chase and that, so presumably that is the connection which is being made by the Prime Minister and others. Also, the fact that they were doing this at 4 a.m. in the morning may have actually been a reason why filming didn't make much sense.
But as we say, the spotlight now on the social media companies to do more, although they say they are getting rid of a lot of the material before it even is uploaded, they need to do more, that's quite certain. Well, that story features on the front of the Metro with the headline, "Time to Halt the Hell Rides." We'll have a full rundown of what's in the rest of the newspapers at hour. Now, Andy Burnham says now is the time to keep up the pressure on Russia during a visit to Ukraine, his first foreign trip as Prime Minister. Mr Burnham praised the Ukrainian people as they marked Independence Day and confirmed the UK is handing over the blueprint to allow Ukraine to produce its own long-range missiles. Moscow says Britain is now participating in the war. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn, reports.
If there had been any doubts about Andy Burnham's commitment to the Ukrainian cause, he has in one day dispelled them, making Kyiv his first foreign destination as Prime Minister, standing alongside Ukraine's wartime leader, his voice ringing with conviction. He pledged his support.
As President Zelensky has said, Ukraine is not a poor relative, but a strong ally. I'd go further still. Ukraine has been Europe's protector, not a drain on our security, but the front line of keeping Europe safe.
The Prime Minister had come to Kyiv for Ukrainian independence events, a day laden with symbolism highlighting the sacrifices made in this war, and to meet with allies in the coalition of the willing supporting Ukraine. He brought with him the promise to let Ukraine build its own Storm Shadow missiles, provoking, predictably, Russia's anger.
Britain is participating in this war on the side of the Kyiv regime. Britain is methodically and consistently adding fuel to the fire and plotting to prevent a peaceful settlement process. That is precisely what they're doing.
But what does the UK get in return for that Storm Shadow technology? Well, Britain wants to tap into something that Ukraine, and only Ukraine really has, operational experience in fighting the new kind of war raging on the front line with Russian forces, a sci-fi war of machines, drones and AI. Ukraine is developing powerful AI platforms helping to trace, track and target the enemy, and Britain will now have access to the AI technology that Ukraine is building. These pictures said all about this war, the world's first military parade, comprising only unmanned weapon systems. What Ukraine needs most, though, is protection against this: Russian ballistic missile attacks on civilian targets. France has now authorised Ukraine to use its technology to make its own interceptors to neutralise the ballistic missile menace. Britain's Ministry of Defence has told Sky News the UK will not be doing the same as part of this latest deal with Ukraine. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
So how significant is today's announcement about British missile technology being handed to Ukraine? Here's our military analyst, Professor Michael Clark.
This is the Storm Shadow. It's a big, heavy missile. It's got a pretty good warhead. It's designed for penetrating underground areas or fixed sites, so it can burrow into a command site or an ammunition dump or a radar station, whatever it might be. And it can do a lot of damage behind the front lines. That's what it's designed for. That's what it can do. We shouldn't get too excited about this because the Ukrainians will produce it themselves, but probably it will be next year, at least, before they have sufficient numbers that will make any sort of difference. And there's another couple of limitations we ought to be aware of. One is that when Storm Shadow flies, and certainly when it's flown in Ukraine in the past, it flies normally with a MALD missile, and that is the miniature air-launched decoy. And the MALD missile is a very clever little thing. It can make itself look like several aircraft to a radar operator or many other missiles or a big heavy cruise missile. It can overwhelm radar defences. It can attract attacks onto itself. It can cut holes in a defence system that the Storm Shadow can then go through. This, of course, is an American missile made by Raytheon. There is a European version being developed called Spear. Maybe that will be ready by next year, we'll see. But it's one of the uncertainties of the future of Storm Shadow as a European-only system. The other limitation is the fact that Storm Shadow is so clever because it's terrain following. It actually gets low down and it follows the terrain. But the point is the terrain changes all the time. It changes with the seasons. It certainly changes when there's snow on the ground. And so in order to use the navigational cleverness of Storm Shadow properly, you have to have accurate, up-to-date versions of what the terrain looks like. Not something that was accurate 3 or 4 weeks ago, something that is accurate as of yesterday and today. And that information, what the terrain really looks like in the area you're interested in, you can only get from American satellite surveillance and American intelligence sources. And that's the point. Only the Americans can provide the terrain information that Storm Shadow needs to be really accurate.
So, Adam, this agreement announcement made by Andy Burnham today to provide the blueprint for long-range missiles, Storm Shadow technology, significant. But as we've heard there from Professor Clark, there are limitations. For one, it's not going to be implemented tomorrow.
Yeah, and this is a joint gesture with the French because it's an Anglo-French missile. But I think it is significant that 4.5 years into this conflict, that Britain and France both see an advantage in terms of sharing their technology and cooperating with the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians have been so successfully in developing their own technology, particularly drone technology. And it is clearly, if you like, an escalation in the commitment of the UK. I mean, you may remember back in the early years of the war, there was a lot of debate about possibly limiting the use of cruise missiles and Tomahawk missiles to strike beyond the front line into Russia. Now that inhibition has now disappeared completely, as we've also seen with the reports in the Sunday Times that British-made drones have been used to strike into Russia. And it also shows how this war is changing. A lot of talk about the front line and the meat grinder, where neither side has really made a lot of progress. But what Ukraine is now doing is, as Michael Clark was saying there, striking behind the lines, hitting strategic targets, leading, for example, to petrol shortages across Russia, which is supposedly a petroleum exporting state. So the UK, if you like, is now lending its muscle, its technology to this new phase of the war, which is going behind the lines. And of course, the Russians are trying to reciprocate, although they're far less squeamish about hitting civilian targets. The Ukrainians are still trying to avoid civilian targets, whereas on a daily basis, Russia is doing it. And you know, what some Ukrainians are saying, what we really need now, as Dominic was saying in his report, are defensive weapons to shoot down these missiles which are coming in. And it doesn't appear that the UK is in much of a position to help with that.
But they are also getting something from the deal, because there's an agreement that's been signed in terms of Ukraine sharing their information in AI technology. And so it's not really as one-sided as perhaps it seems, that, you know, we're giving to Ukraine, that there's lots that Ukraine can teach.
Yeah, they are teaching us. I mean, we know that Ukraine have led the way in technology up until now with drones, but now they are sharing some of the secret battlefield intelligence that they've gathered on how the Russian forces operate. So that will be shared and fed in to the UK military defences, the way that AI can operate. So there is definitely a reciprocal arrangement there. Adam's absolutely right, Dominic's right, the interceptors issue is the main one, because it's all very well for Ukraine to have the means to strike into Russia and raise awareness among Russian people of what is really happening. But without the interceptors, and of course, we know that the supplies of those have been seriously drained, the American supplies at least, because of the war in Iran and the need to protect Israel and parts of the Middle East. So, you know, there is so much to this that is needed. I think also a key thing that we mustn't forget, the Ukrainian people who have been battered for 4.5 years. And I'm sure there must have been times when they were really worried about battle fatigue setting in among the so-called allies. How long would they persist in offering such full-throated support? And I think that's why the words from Andy Burnham again are very important. Not just to those Ukrainian people, but also to President Zelensky, who's facing a lot of pressure himself domestically at home at the moment.
Yeah. Well, it was a serious visit for the Prime Minister, but his reputation as a guitarist had clearly reached Kiev. A group of Ukrainian soldiers met Mr Burnham and they'd brought a guitar along, and the Prime Minister was happy to oblige. Take a look at this.
It's a song by a Manchester band called The Smiths. You know The Smiths? Yeah. It's a song called Rush Home Ruffians. I'm out of practice a little bit. Harry's waiting for me to sing, but it's not going to happen, Harry.
last night of the fair by the big wheel generator.
He knows his limitations. Thank goodness he didn't sing. But he's in that position where politicians are asked to do, you know, ordinary things. We were famous, remember Theresa May when she danced, which she perhaps shouldn't have on that tour. Yes, she should have left that one alone. But he seems perfectly comfortable and quite natural, doesn't he?
It could have been so orcs, couldn't it? But it wasn't. He did seem natural. He did pick up the guitar. I think he probably has got quite a good skill with it. It would have been nice if they turned the amp up, wouldn't it, so that we could actually hear it. But you know, good on him for doing it, because it's quite daunting, isn't it, to start playing the guitar like that.
Also, picture on the front of the Telegraph of him meeting wounded soldiers as well.
Yes.
I mean, he you know, I think what one would have to say, this first foreign trip has been, you know, a big success for him. He's got his message across. He's got his personality across as well. And you know, the serious stuff he did quite well as well. And you know, I've said it before, but you know, that sort of quick riposte to the Russians, saying you're pouring flame on the fire, to say, well, who started the fire? You know, is I think something that people will remember.
And the chance to mix it with the coalition of the willing leaders as well.
I was just going to say, as a seasoned political journalist, do you give him 10 out of 10 for this first international visit?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you know, it had some substance with the technological cooperation and, you know, on the 3 points that people are talking about: communication, you know, sympathy, communication and having a message. He's actually, you know, managed to do all of those.
Carolyn, 10 out of 10 as well?
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult to fault it, although people will fault the fact that he arrived not wearing a tie and a suit.
But you saw that as a bonus, though, didn't you?
On a train.
Yeah, exactly.
Even I don't wear a tie.
I think it's gone as well as it possibly could. The fact that he's been able to showcase the UK and his leadership on that international stage, mixing it with the other leaders of the coalition of the willing as well.
And there is a significant domestic message here, which is there's no change in our position, which, according to the opinion polls that have been conducted, the majority support, continued support for Ukraine. But there are people on the right, perhaps admiring of Putin, on the left, bit anti-war, worried about being drawn into conflicts, who are less happy. I mean, they're minorities, but he's basically sent out the message today that they can, you know, they can get lost. There's not going to be any.
And he's completely reassured Zelensky. So a 10 out of 10 from both of you. We're on agreement here. Coming up, the United States unveils new sanctions targeting Iran in what the Trump administration is calling economic D-Day.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch. We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
The United States has unveiled new sanctions targeting Iran in what the Trump administration is calling economic D-Day. The measures would hit any country which trades with Tehran, with Donald Trump said to be calling world leaders to persuade them to cut ties. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says all countries have a decision to make.
Iran now faces a very clear choice with only two paths before them: complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy. To those who enable Tehran, do not discount the cost of testing Washington's resolve. No nation should expect to enjoy the rewards of our system while helping those who seek to destroy it. It is now a time for world leaders to make a decision between prosperity and isolation, peace and terror, America and Iran.
Adam, does this strike you as desperation now?
Yeah, it strikes me as today's bit of Trump administration bluster. I think it's telling that it's not on the front pages of any of the newspapers, including the broadsheets of what we used to call the broadsheets, the quality papers or the Financial Times. And it's very difficult to see what this is actually going to amount to. At the news conference, the Treasury Secretary was asked, well, what are you going to do about China? And he didn't have an answer. And then the only country that he could talk about bending to America's will was United Arab Emirates, who've done it voluntarily rather than actually have to be threatened by America. So is he really going to, as he suggested, blow up the international system with sanctions? I mean, Trump tried that before with tariffs on China and he had to back off. Chinese have said today, this isn't going to make any difference to us. Pakistanis are actually on a trade mission in Iran at the moment. They're now in alliance with Saudi Arabia and Turkey economically. I mean, it just looks like, as you say, desperation, a desperate desire to say that America is the strongest in the world and everyone else had better fall in line at a time when, frankly, disastrously incompetent foreign policy from the Trump administration is only making things worse.
Yeah, and we've seen the Trump administration make these threats before, only to back down and not carry through.
Donald Trump has consistently insisted that the US is winning here, or that the US has won, or is about to win. But the Iranians are just learning that the threats never really develop into anything else. And I'm sure that they will be viewing this threat just like all the others. As you say, Adam, the Chinese will be saying, not affecting us yet. Is Donald Trump really going to embark on another trade war with China? when he's already drawn back from one and settled with them. We know that he's having a trade war with his nearest neighbour, Canada. So it's one of these Trumpian moments that we have seen quite a few of these in the past, and they haven't come to something. So let's see. He's also got a visit, hasn't he, coming up from the Chinese President Xi Jinping, due in the White House pretty shortly. So that will be an interesting way of sealing a friendship over a trade war, I don't think.
I mean, the truth is, all the military analysts say the only way that America could win this war would be boots on the ground, would be an invasion, and mercifully, no one seems really to be contemplating that.
And the memorandum of understanding has gone, hasn't it? The time lapse.
Yep. It's the deadline passed.
That's run out. There is no effective ceasefire. The Strait of Hormuz is still blocked. There is no resolution to it. It's stalemate.
And Oman, on the other side of the Straits of Hormuz, he threatened to bomb the something unpleasant out of Oman for even daring to talk about a solution that wasn't under the auspices of the Americans.
Yeah, but certainly the sanctions are a confirmation that the US is on the back foot militarily, and boots on the ground is not something we are going to see, I don't believe.
Yeah, I think, though, the fact is that Donald Trump is under far more domestic pressure, isn't he, than the Iranian regime is, certainly, because they don't care about public opinion.
Yeah, his poll ratings are the lowest ever, and he has the midterms.
Yeah, I mean, latest opinion polls now saying that there are 6 states which are a toss-up, including Texas and Iowa, which you wouldn't have necessarily thought before. So the possibility of the Democrats winning the Senate as well as the House is now being actively talked about by pollsters, which before winning the Senate was seemed out of reach. And of course, you know, if you've got the House, you can cause trouble, but if you've got a majority in the Senate, you can really obstruct the presidential will.
But the president continues to insist, you know, and display confidence over this. So, you know, he will continue to say that he is winning and he will win, and his supporters believe him.
I think it's that term that he coined, isn't it? Alternative truth. Is what's being deployed. Shall we see what's making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers now for you? And time to halt the hell rides is the headline in the Metro, with the paper leading on social media firms being ordered to remove videos of joyriders after 7 people died in a head-on crash near Middlesbrough on Saturday. It's the same story in the Daily Express, with the paper noting that videos of cars weaving through traffic at more than 100 miles an hour were still visible on some platforms. The Sun says Andy Burnham has declared war on deadly joyride videos. The Guardian reports on the Prime Minister accusing the Kremlin of making outrageous threats against the country during his first visit to Ukraine since entering Downing Street. The UK has been handed the secrets to foil Putin's saboteurs, according to The Telegraph, with the paper reporting on a deal for Ukraine to share its battlefield intelligence. Andy Burnham refusing to rule out tax rises in the autumn budget is on the front of The Times, with the Prime Minister saying he won't be unrealistic about the state of the public finances. The Eye reports that Housing Secretary Angela Rayner is planning to create a boom in social and council housing by building tens of thousands more properties across the country. The Daily Mail reports that 1 in 7 people in England were prescribed with antidepressants last year, following a rise in mental health problems since the pandemic. The Financial Times goes with Donald Trump's pledge to increase Canadian car tariffs to 50% after trade talks collapsed between the two countries. News that snooker champion Graham Dott has been found guilty of sexually abusing children is the lead in The Star. We start with the Sun front page, Carolyn, and take us into this. Their headline, War on Deadly Joyride Vids. We were commenting before that really it should not be described as joyriding. It's not the best description for something that actually can have hellish consequences.
Well, again, they also quote the Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, saying it's truly reprehensible, this trend to share videos of dangerous driving, fast driving, very dangerous activity. And The Sun says that it has uncovered scores of clips showing youths goading police into chases. So although we know so far the police are saying that there is no evidence that this was one of those instances of a group of youngsters filming themselves to put it onto social media, although one of the people in the car had done that in a previous occasion, it has just amplified the debate about this and has brought more pressure onto the social media platforms who are still carrying this kind of material, even though TikTok says it's not, they have rules on this and they try to abide by their rules, but this content is still getting through.
Adam, what action do you think we're going to see on this? As you say, TikTok say they do their utmost to take down many of these videos before they're even made available for people to view, but there are still a substantial number getting through.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, under the Online Safety Act, it would be possible to impose fines or have sanctions if it is seen that the online platforms are not doing what they should do to take this down. But, that's a very complex and cumbersome process. I don't think we're going to see a rush for further laws on the online companies, because we're going to see a rush for enforcement. I think in terms of the perpetrators of putting videos, the people putting videos on record. I mean, if you put up a video which shows yourself committing a crime, you can be prosecuted. I mean, the evidence is there, and that may be the direction which the police are going. Clearly, the 12 arrests which we've been reporting tonight in connection to this crash suggests that perhaps that's already happening.
Let's move to the Telegraph, Karen, their front page. The story of Andy Burnham's visit to Kiev today and the fact that Ukraine is going to be sharing intelligence with us, described as gold mine intelligence, which could help protect us from Russian espionage.
Yeah, the Telegraph reports that this data will enable Britain to identify and respond to threats such as Russian drones more rapidly than ever before. It can be used to protect British airports, prisons, hospitals, even railways and energy plants. And we know that there is an awareness of the sort of cyber attacks that there can be, the sort of surveillance that the Russians are already known to be carrying out on, British underseas cables and the like. So I think this will be, as the Telegraph describes it, a goldmine of secret battlefield intelligence. And how interesting that we have a situation here where we have the British government being helped by Ukraine, when up until now there's been the sense that the Ukrainians have been the taking partners, the receiving partners in this, but they are doing their best to hand back secrets that can help the UK.
Yeah, I mean, the context that I was just going to say that Russia saying that, the UK is now participating in the war. And we read here in the Telegraph that they're the first country outside of Ukraine to be given access to Kiev's vast Avenger Labs repository containing millions of images of Russian tanks, air defences, troops, drones and artillery systems.
Yeah, and, that will certainly be good news to NATO if they're getting this information, and a still powerful military nation like the UK is in a position to learn from it. Very good. I mean, we have to remember that there was a British base in Cyprus that was attacked. There have been lots of supports of drone surveillance of British facilities, and it's also again a sign of the leadership quality of Zelensky, that he has been very quick to offer assistance to countries that come under attack. We know, for example, his response to the Iranian counterattack on American bases in allies across the Gulf was to say, well, look, I've got some technology that can help you fight this off. So he's working hard, building alliances all the time.
Yeah, and quite telling actually that Andy Burnham said today that Ukraine had been protecting us, and he's keen to show that actually we've been on the receiving end of their technology and the fact that they've been so successful in this war thus far.
And so resilient. The pictures of the Prime Minister meeting some of the Ukrainian soldiers who've been wounded, we can only admire their resilience and resolve to carry on fighting for their country. You know, going on so long. At the start of this war, people thought that it would be all over so quickly, didn't they? Of course, you've got the challenging winter months coming up now, and the need of the Ukrainian forces to get those interceptor weapons, which mean that they can counterattack the attacks coming on them, never mind the ones that they want to launch deep into Russia as well.
Yeah, I mean, basic point, but Ukrainians basically speak Russian, or they have familiarity with Russian because it's on their borders, so that in terms of intelligence gathering, they're bound to be fantastically efficient, you know, compared to nations which have to get, like us, which have to get Russian specialists to do all this.
But as you say, a real indicator of Zelensky's leadership in that he's been able to identify what they can offer. Yeah, that's been key. OK, coming up next, we're going to discuss more of the biggest and best stories from tomorrow's newspapers. Do stay with us if you can.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
You're watching the wrap. We're still taking you through the newspapers. Carolyn and Adam, let's have a look at the Times front page and this story regarding, well, we know that Andy Burnham's doing very well on the international stage thus far. You both gave him 10 out of 10 for his visit to Kiev, but back here might not be great news. He's said to be realistic concerning tax increases in the budget.
Yeah, he says, I'm not going to lie, the economic situation is difficult. He wouldn't rule out tax increases. He has ruled out breaking the manifesto promises on income tax and VAT and national insurance, which means everyone is expecting some sort of property wealth tax to emerge as the only way that he could raise the money, starting with, appropriately enough, the 4.7 billion needed to fill the black hole in planned defence spending. That's before you get to the planned increases.
Yeah, so he won't take risks with people's livelihoods.
Yeah, I mean, he's got three choices, hasn't he? You raise tax, you borrow more, or you cut. And he knows that the backbenchers would be quite difficult about any proposed cuts in a large scale. But the financial difficulties are piling up, aren't they, Adam? You know, borrowing in July was far more than expected. National debt stands at, what, 3 trillion or just about? And the debt interest payments are £100 billion a year. And Rachel Reeves left a situation where a lot of the good stuff was front-ended, and so some difficult times are coming. So he's got to find the money somehow.
It's going to have to be a big budget.
Yeah. But he is warning of those challenging times to come. Take us to the Eye, Adam, and Angela Rayner revealing plans for 70,000 homes.
Yeah, I mean, the Eye pretty enthusiastic about all of this, saying that she's going to get people building on the so-called grey belt. 10 billion's been handed to councils to spend on social housing, 70,000. Slight problem that the FT covers the story as well. And the FT's version of this 10 billion is number 10 dilutes the homes plan, and that what was expected was 39 billion. So that's perhaps one of the cuts coming. So you could take your choice.
Interesting lesson in how to write the same story in completely different ways. Well, let's just quickly go to the Telegraph. Carolyn, take us to this paper, back to Andy Burnham and his thoughts for tuition fees.
Yes, this is all part of a closer relationship with the EU, which, of course, was started with Keir Starmer and Nick Thomas-Symonds, who was leading the negotiations to just bring the two a bit closer. And there's been a lot of speculation that Andy Burnham may offer cheaper tuition fees for European students in return for a better trade deal with the EU. Now, of course, there will be uproar from people who feel that that is not the way to go, who do not want that kind of closer development of ties with the EU.
But also domestic students, will they say, what about our
domestic students won't be happy, and the universities certainly won't be happy about losing, what, £30,000 that they normally get from a European school.
We haven't got time to get to the Metro and talk about the protein-rich biscuits made out of plastic bottles.
Yeah, well, protein bars taste like plastic anyway, don't they?
Prime Minister doesn't eat biscuits, does he? It's gravy.
I think you're not wrong about that, actually. That's a lot. Thank you very much for taking us through the papers, Carolyn and Adam. Good to see you both. Coming up, POW. Chelsea made a winning start to the new Premier League season.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
There's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, eh?
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in. Get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
But that is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
I bet right now you often find yourself asking why. Why was a certain decision taken? Why did something happen? Why did they say or do that? I'm Neil Patterson, and it's my job as a journalist to find out why. Just explain why.
It's a difficult one.
Well, I mean, it's massive.
It's a very, very severe situation.
So if you want to make sense of this complicated world, Sky News' new podcast, This Is Why, is your daily fix. One story every day, and we can find out why together. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury. I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Time now to catch up on all of the very latest sports news with Mike.
Bid has been tabled by Manchester City for Dimitar Berbatov in the last few minutes.
We've made an offer. I think it's agreed between ourselves and Tottenham, and now really it's about the Birmingham decision, I think.
City come in and you're thinking, goodness me, this is another statement from them.
When did you become aware that Manchester City had entered the race?
On the way to the Carrington, then I find out that City are coming in with the offer.
Are you on the phone to Robbie Keane saying, is he signing or not?
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you fear at one stage that he would go to Manchester City?
No, I didn't fear it. If City had snatched that one right at the death, the noisy neighbours would have been absolutely the noisiest ever.
The question now is, which hospital is he going to have his medical? Is it Manchester City's hospital or Manchester United?
My agent is telling me, in the car, someone called him. He's in the front seat. Sir Alex is next to him. I'm in the back seat. So someone is calling him and telling him that. And I'm like thinking to myself, so how do I react here? What do I say? What is Alex going to say? And I'm like, Emil, no. You know where we're going. We know what we came for. Just one club here. We'll go for United.
If he sort of turned at the last minute and gone to Man City, then it probably wasn't the right player for us anyway. I was confident that he wouldn't go there in the end.
I do think they were trying to get under United's skin. I think it was kind of like, we'll show you. We can certainly challenge you money-wise now. Any player United would have gone for that day, that summer, City probably would have thrown their hat in the ring as well.
Why were you so set on United?
It was like the badge, it was like the history, it was like the players, it was like the legends, it was like the trophies, the manager, the fans, the stadium, the aura.
You definitely joining Man United tonight?
We go to Old Trafford where the offices were. I go in, I see the whole table full of documents ready to be signed, if needed to be signed, but prepared just in case. Then I go to a different room with David Gill, with Sir Alex, my agent, the lawyers. It was up and down to the corridors, to the offices, people talking on the phone. Daniel Levy calling on one line and say, come back right now, we're not letting you go.
I can't get frantic and sitting here calmly. I wouldn't like to sort of give you the impression that
That was the wrap. Thank you so much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News for you throughout the night. Anil Adami will be with you, keeping you company. Thanks for watching.